Okay, so for this clue in the escape room, we are going to take a look at paragraph 25. And this is an opportunity for you to practice some of our multiple choice reading questions. This one is the comma queen question, and this is really important as you begin to understand words within the context of a sentence. It can also help you with tone. So taking a look at paragraph 25, we're looking at this sentence right here. And in fact, this is one of your questions when you went in and completed the questions before the escape room. So take a look at your own story. Please grab your own text from Google Classroom and take a moment to scroll down to paragraph 25 with me. Okay, so this yellow highlighted sentence, Gregor was now cut off from the mother, who was perhaps near death, with him to blame. He was not permitted to open the door as he didn't want to chase away the sister who had remained with mother. He now had nothing to do except wait, and plagued by self-reproach and anxiety, he began to crawl. He crawled over everything, walls, furniture, and ceilings, and when the whole room had just begun to spin around him, he finally fell, in his despair, onto the middle of a large table. So that's one of my favorite sentences in the Metamorphosis because it is incredibly long, and a lot of Franz Kafka's, the author of Kafka's writing in this story, contains really long sentences that are separated by dashes or hyphens and commas, and this is an example of that. So if we are asked to consider the self-reproach, the hyphenated word self-reproach. And if we had a question that said, well, what is the tone of self-reproach? And what is the tone in this paragraph? How does Gregor feel about his situation? What is that attitude towards this situation? So we need to first identify positive or negative, the feel, okay? And we can do that with the entire paragraph by looking at clues, and whichever feel trends the highest, appears the most, we are going to then assume or infer that this paragraph, right, is a negative feel, a negative tone. So I'm looking at words. If I'm going to first determine, is it positive or negative, right? I'm going to be looking for phrases that either go one way or the other, positive or negative. So if I have that he was cut off, okay, perhaps near death, there's blame. He was not, right? Not, if you don't know what permitted is, but not allowed to do something. And he had nothing to do except wait. He was plagued, like the plague, anxiety. So I skipped over self-reproach because I'm trying to figure out everything around it. Are the words positive or negative? And then I'm going to assume, right, that self-reproach is also the same feel as what is around it. So far with cut off, near death, blame, not permitted, didn't want, had nothing, plagued, anxiety. So we have all these clues that are negative in feel. And then with self-reproach, we can infer that is a negative feel word. But we're also looking, right, to the to either side of that, and super important, just as important as the comma queen rule, we have the and. And functions the same way as a comma, right? It joins two things that we can assume are 90% of the time very similar. So if you don't know one word on one side of the and, look at the word on the other side. And for this one, I have anxiety is on one side of the and. So self-reproach, while it might not mean exactly the same thing as anxiety, it's going to be in the same feel family. So anxiety has a negative feel, self-reproach, negative feel. Why is that important? Because when we go to look at the multiple choice questions and we have to find which is the best match for self-reproach, we are only going to be looking for the negative, right? Which ones are the negative? Feel in the A, B, C, D. And then we can cross out or eliminate any words in the answer choices that are positive, okay? Okay, so your final clue comes from this question. Read the excerpt from the metamorphosis in the box below. Identify the answer choice that best supports the tone of the word in bold below. So it's a little hard to see, but this is the word in bold, right? We've been dealing with this word. I'll put it in red, self-reproach. So in order to answer this multiple choice question, I'm first going to go to the actual answer choices below just to kind of see what this question is like. So this is like a fill in the blank. In this excerpt, Gregor, and then we need to figure out which one we could choose. So if we know that this whole tone, right, of this section of this excerpt is negative, a negative feel, my first response then is going to cross out here anything that has a positive feel to it in the A, B, C, D choices. So if I have was filled with a sense of self-realization. So I have to figure out, is that negative feel or is that positive feel? I'm thinking of full of, right? Well, it could be full of something negative or it could be full of something positive. Self-realization, is that a negative or positive feel? So that's the first thing you need to ask yourself. So take a moment to think about that. Are you going to cross that out, right? Can you get rid of anything that is a positive feel in the ABCD? That is your first step here. I will talk you through B, C, and D. I'm not going to tell you which to cross out, but I would like for you to cross out an answer choice that you think is a positive feel in the ABCD, or more than one. Lacked self-confidence. Interesting. Self-confidence is a positive feel, but then when there's a word that comes in front of it that flips it into a negative, right? Then it becomes a negative feel word. So if you lack self-confidence, you don't have it. Okay. Suffered from self-accusation. All right, so you have to decide, is that positive or is that negative feel? Lost his self-determination. Again, self-determination is positive, right? It's great to have self-determination, to be moving forward, to know what you want, to be determined. But when you lose it, that immediately flips it to negative. So your takeaway from this, and I will give you, you can pause the video now and cross out any positive feel phrases. Why don't you do that? Okay, so once you've crossed out your positive feel answer choice or choices, your takeaway, your big lesson here is that in order to use PO, process of elimination, you need to know what is the feel of the passage or the specific sentence or the word. Okay, we determined it was negative. And then you have to cross out any that do not match that feel, right? So if it's negative, we're crossing out positive. But it's tricky because in order to figure out if an answer choice is positive or negative, we need to look at the words together. Because if I'm just skimming, I see self-confidence, that's positive. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and cross it out because it's positive. But wait, we didn't read carefully because lacked before self-confidence immediately turns it into a negative. Like it's kind of like math, isn't it? So that adjective before that word, self-confidence, is so powerful that it can flip the word into a negative. All right, so that's your major takeaway. You have now done PO, process of elimination. You've taken out what you feel would be the positives, right? So then your next step in order to answer this question, right, is to, with the remaining 3 or 2 answer choices you have left, depending on what positives you crossed out, you need to go back and you need to look at these words here, right? Whatever ones you have left, look at the things, the big universal ideas within each answer choice, right? Is there evidence that he was full of self-realization? If we didn't cross this out, you go back and you have to kind of compare it. Well, what is self-realization? You have to think about that. Is there evidence that he has no self-confidence, right? Is there evidence that he had self-accusation? So what does that mean? What is self-accusation? What does it mean to put the self in front of something? Well, if I have self-confidence, I have confidence. So then decide what that would mean for self-accusation. And then did he lose self-determination? So it's not only, right? So go back to the question, identify the answer choice that best supports the tone of the word in bold below. So now we're really focused on the tone. What is the tone of self-reproach? Well, what does self-reproach mean? We don't know exactly what it means. Do not look it up, because I want you to practice what this feels like taking a test where you can't look up a definition. So we're going to use what we have. We're going to use what we know. We know it's negative, a negative tone, but that might not be enough to answer the question. So we need to go to the left, remember that one? So we need to go to the left and figure out if he was plagued by this, right? To be plagued by. So what does that mean, right? And go to the left, what happened, all right? So start at the beginning. He was, all right, what was he? Cut off from his mother, okay? He was to blame. He was not permitted to open the door. So with those things, what can we figure out comparing these words here? Do you see a connection between any of these self-realization, self-confidence, self-accusation, self-determination? Do you see a connection between any of those 4 things within what has happened? He was cut off. He was blamed. It was his fault. He couldn't open the door, right? And he was plagued by this thing, whatever it is that you're trying to figure out that's connected to cut off. He was to blame. He couldn't open the door. So now your brain has to kind of say, okay, which of these things matches this, what we're trying to do? Cut off, blame, not permitted to open the door. He was like, all right, so cut off, blame, not permitted to open the door. I'm trying to get this back. Okay. So your clue here, right, when you get this complete, so your clue answers are below. If you chose A, your clue is realization. If you chose B, your clue is confidence. If you chose C, your clue is accusation with 2 C's. And if you chose D, your clue is determination. So make sure those are in capital letters and go ahead and go back to the website here and plug in your answer choices for the clue that is the coins. This one is for the coins. And good luck.